Are you looking for the same old tropes and same cliches of a young adult novel adapted into a film? If you're looking for all those and you love all those, then go see The Fifth Wave. It's got all the cliches and tropes you would love. So I saw The Fifth Wave in theaters, and yeah, it's pretty boring. Now look, I didn't totally hate this film, but I can understand people absolutely hating it and thinking it's one of the worst young adult novels adapted to film that they've seen. Listen, we're getting way too much nowadays to a point where things are getting really old and cliched. Anyway, what's Fifth Wave about? Well, it's an alien invasion movie, or at least it tries its best to be an alien invasion movie. What's happened is the aliens borrowed the District 9 ship. Just look at this. Look at this. They borrowed the District 9 ship to attack Earth. But they don't just wipe out Earth, they do it in waves. The first wave cut out all our power. The second wave brought earthquakes and really bad CGI waves. The third wave brought the bird flu that just wiped out pretty much everyone. Fourth wave, the aliens disguised as humans and started just integrating with them. And now the fifth wave is supposedly coming and might just wipe out all the remaining survivors. But this movie is the story about a young girl who's still alive who has lost her brother because her brother was taken by the military, and she wants to get to the base to get to her brother. All the while the military is training the children to fight the wars that the fifth wave is surely going to come. Also, did I mention that our main girl comes in contact with a guy, and of course they fall in love and starts a love triangle that's gonna sure to happen in the sequel if it ever comes. Might. People seem to dig this movie. To be honest, the movie starts off pretty promising. The first scene in the entire movie is probably my favorite scene in the entire movie, and the only one I truly really liked and thought was quite effective. Basically, it's a scene when she's on her own and she's scavenging for things in this convenience store, and she hears a person in the back scream out for help. And boy, would you know it, it's the scene in the trailer where this happens.
Our only choice is to take it back.
Drop it!
I know you're human.
How?
Because if you were one of them, you would have shot me already.
Thankfully, that line and that situation doesn't really turn out like the trailer does. And I really liked how they did it in the movie because it was quite horrific. And the aftermath of what happened and how it affected her was actually pretty well acted. Unfortunately, right after this scene, it goes into cringe-worthy territory. Yeah, after that it jumps right to the past before the invasion happens, before the aliens show up, and it's supposed to be the last normal day of her life, and it is some cringe-worthy dialogue. Like, it's your typical young adult sort of dialogue where they're at a party, but it's like really bad because they don't know how kids really talk, and it's... oh, God. It is horrible. It goes from like the best scene in the movie to easily the worst scene in the movie right then and there. And so you get a really long moment where they're explaining what happened to her before this scene, and it takes a while for her to actually get to the point where the movie actually began, and it's kind of really boring. Now, I'm not going to lie, there are scenes in this movie that feel like, okay, that could have been effective, but we've seen it better in other movies. Like when the famine and the plague hits. When the plague hits, there's a scene where they're in the football field and they're quarantined people that are infected, and it has dead bodies laid out on the ground. It really could have been an effective scene, but I've seen that done before in other films, like other Contagion films that are really good. And so it just sort of like, oh, I've seen it before. I saw it before. Sorry, film. I've seen it already. And as far as acting goes, the only ones that were pretty consistent were Liev Schreiber, who's pretty emotionless drill sergeant sort of character. Well, he's not really a drill sergeant sort of character, but he's a general, or he's in the army, and he's just really bland and emotionless, which he can do pretty well. I've seen it done pretty well in Spotlight, and I heard he's really good in Donovan, or is that the name of the series? So he can do that sort of character really well, and he just sort of he does it again in this one, and it's just sort of boring. Also, this movie is sort of two stories in one, because you get the side where the military is training the kids, and you have a main character in that section of the story, while you have a main character in your actual main character, which is Chloe Grace Moretz. And to be honest, the guide character in the military story, I thought he was actually really good in the film. His name's Nick Robinson. Well, the actor is. While Chloe Grace Moretz was really good towards the end of the film, I feel. I didn't really... It's one of those weird moments where, okay, we know her as Hit Girl, we know her in Kick-Ass, and we know how badass she can be. And so we've sort of developed that this is what kind of character she should be. And so when she's not a badass character, when she's trying to play a normal, a little bit more fragile character, it just looks really weird. Like during the beginning of the movie, where she's just trying to be a normal teen and she's just trying to be the scared, helpless sort of girl, it just comes off as really weird and really bad, especially the moments when she's crying. It's like really uncomfortable and weird. Then towards the end of the movie, where she's a little bit of a mixture of a badass and a character actually growing and becoming better, I thought she did a good job towards the end of the movie. Now, I will say this movie does try a little bit better to be a more mature young adult novel adaptation. There is moments where there actually is blood and people are getting shot, and there are moments where the action is a little bit more intense than other young adult novel adaptations. But then there's this one scene that really could have been horrific and really could have been more brutal and actually would have worked well like that, but it looks a little cartoony. Like, it could have been a really effective scene and a good action scene. Basically, it's the first time that the children are actually fighting against the aliens. They have these new gear that show which ones are aliens and who are not. And so they're actually going around trying to kill the aliens, and it could have been a really effective, especially when this twist happens towards the end of that scene, or towards the end of that point of the movie. And it just looks cartoony, because when we're seeing it through their visors, where it shows like the inside of the skull, and it just shows this green sort of alien parasite, but it looks like a cartoon. It looks video game-ish every time they shoot a character, and it looks more comical than horrific or actually badass. And it feels like it's ruined, you know? It feels like that scene could have been a whole lot better. The twists in this movie, both of them are very predictable. One of them you should already know just by seeing the trailer, because it gives it away. The other one, all you have to do is suspect someone, and it's very easy to suspect a certain group of people, and you're like, oh, I think I know what's going to happen. This is probably going to happen. Oh, yep, there it is. There's a twist. And maybe you're thinking, okay, well, you probably watched other reviews and they helped you come to that conclusion, which they sort of did. But I went with my dad. He doesn't watch those reviews. He only seen one of the trailers, and he predicted that twist, same as me, way before it even happened. Like, we were both telling each other, I knew it. I knew that was happening. Well, I guess there's some people out there that didn't see the twist coming, because there's this one person in the theater, as soon as it happens, he goes, I love this film. I could see him. He was like in the middle of the theater. It was a packed theater, and I just saw him go, I love this film. He was like middle-aged. He wasn't like my age. He wasn't younger than me. He was definitely older. He was definitely around my dad's age or a little bit younger than him. It was a grown-ass man who loves this film. Speaking of which, I didn't really see a lot of teens in the theater. Most of the people in the theater were older people, like people that read 50 Shades of Grey and stuff, you know, like my grandma and stuff, like that age. And I've seen people my dad and mom's age, and like I was like one of the younger people in the theater. There was very few people younger than me. I think a lot of people came into it thinking it was an alien invasion movie, and the trailer made it look like it was. But no, it has all the tropes and all the cliches you'd think about in a young adult novel adaptation. It gets really corny, really cheesy, especially with the love subplot. The love subplot, it's atrocious. Stop, the first love interest, really, he's Mr. Personality. He has nothing. It's like he's really bland, and he's just like, I feel bad for the guy. He maybe he looks hunky to girls, but he was just really bad at his lines, and just, he was the worst part of this movie. But if this scene's any indication, I think we know the reason why he's in this movie. It's because of his looks. Oh, there's this one scene, I couldn't stop laughing. I was having a little bit of fun time towards the end of the movie because I was sort of laughing at it. And there's this one time where this military girl, she's got this really thick lipstick on. She's in the military. She's got this thick lipstick. And there's this one point where she gets her face sort of smashed into this window or this mirror. And when it shows the indentation, when it shows the crack in the mirror, you see this lipstick smear smack dab in the middle, and I'm just like laughing. I could not stop laughing. I'm like, but let's face it, this is a dumb movie. It has some interesting premises, some scenes that could have been good, but ultimately it's pretty bland, very cliched. You've seen it all before. It feels a little bit like The Host mixed with any other young adult novel, mixed with... It's all been done before. And despite this movie being dumb, really cliched young adult novel stuff, you want to know what some guy said to me right after the theater, right after the movie was done? My dad and myself, we were getting out of the theater, and so this guy, he turns to us as we're waiting to cross the street, and he says, "So you came out of the fifth wave too?" And so we're like, "Yeah." And so he's like really excited. He's like really peppy. And he's like, he's in his 40s or 50s. I couldn't quite tell which. But he's really like excited. And he's like, "Man, makes you wonder, doesn't it?" Yeah. Makes you wonder. Oh, man. Makes you... This is not a sci-fi thinking movie. This is not a movie where you think about it and like, man, this could really happen, or like, it's not one of those sci-fi movies you stop and think about it because it's a stupid, dumb, young adult novel related movie that just... But then again, he might be one of those people that goes home and wears like tinfoil hats and stuff and thinks like conspiracies and aliens and all that kind of stuff. Maybe he's one of those guys. He seemed like he could have been one of those guys. Anyway, I'm going to give The Fifth Wave 2 stars. It's not bad enough for me to consider it a really bad movie. I could have some enjoyment in it, but I'm just not going to remember this movie like I'm going to remember all the other ones that have come out before it. So, did you see The Fifth Wave? Did you like it? Are you one of those people that think, hey, it makes you really wonder? Or did you think that it was one of the most boring movies you've ever seen? Anyway, as always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.